Hi there, my name is Bryan Reed. I used to be a technical professor here at CMU Tech. I taught in the agriculture department. Right at the time I came in 2013, there were a handful of students from the Sustainability Council that were interested in how can we make a difference in the world by diverting food waste away from a landfill and actually turning it into a valuable commodity that people would cherish and want to have, and that would be compost. We were able to do a lot of hoop jumping, secure some funding. We had a gentleman by the name of Dr. John Heidemann, who was a community member, who was able to help us with navigating a lot of the details and coordinating, being a nice organizing force. So we were able to build the facility. Like I said, the students wanted to demonstrate sustainability. And so we have a large number of dining hall operations. We also have a culinary arts program here on campus. And so the food waste that gets generated would naturally be going to the landfill. And that's really a disservice to the ecosystem, because we would take that carbon material and put in the landfill where it could turn into methane and be released in the atmosphere. When if you take that food waste and mix it with other carbon sources, a little bit of water, some oxygen, you cultivate microbes to actually convert all that carbon into an organic matter that can go into the soil. And that's a beautiful thing, because here in this dry climate, we're very low in organic matter. It's not a natural occurring substance that we have an abundance of. So think of organic matter as little sponges in the soil, and they absorb water and they hold on to it for longer periods of time. That's better for plant growth, and it also means you have to water less often. So that's a double win in a high desert kind of environment. In addition to that, when we make quality compost, we can cultivate a whole culture of different types of microbes that can then work in your soil to decompose some of the dead leaves, the debris, old plant roots, dead insects. They can break those down and turn them into a food source for the plants. So you can get better nutrient cycling. You can access more nutrients that can get into your plant, so you get to eat healthier food. That's a win as well. We took that a step further, and we wanted to include not only traditional composting, but worm composting as well. Because when you add worms, you can start building up naturally occurring plant growth hormones. You can start building up more classes of microbes that you can't build in traditional composting. So we wanted to have a product that we could bring to the public for both traditional compost for, say, starting a new garden, but we also wanted to have the worm compost for established gardens, specialty growers. We had a large number of folks that were in the greenhouse trade that were propagating specialty and heirloom types of plants, and they wanted that full spectrum of minerals, the nutrients, and the microbes. They wanted that microbiology. Like I say, Sustainability Council wanted to do something that was sustainable. So what I've been referring to is more on the environmental sustainability side of things, that we're not putting something into the into the landfill, but we're actually making it better than it was, and we're turning it into a valuable product. So that dovetails into the social sustainability. It was very important for us to build relationships. Right out of the chute, first thing we did is we got in touch with the folks at the welding department here at CMU Tech, and they built this rack so that we could have lumber for for the containment system here for making the compost. We also got in touch with the construction technology folks, and they built us the shed that we could house our tools and different materials that we need to keep the composting on track. Um, we work with the marketing department to help us put together some labels to help us with some of our advertising and that. And then, of course, being a part of the Sustainability Council, they were instrumental in providing labor and helping us get off the ground and getting the word out to students. We had a very nice arrangement with, obviously, the agriculture department, that the students there could come out and learn composting. We worked really well with the environmental science students on the main campus. We had folks from the biology department come over and do tours. It was very important for us to build relationships with the customers as well, because we know that in Grand Junction, it's not just what you know, but who you know. So it was very important for us to build a cluster of customers that were excited about the compost we were making, and then they could tell their friends and come back in consecutive years. So having a quality product fit into that as well. We also hosted workshops. We did trainings and workshops on making traditional compost, making worm compost. We picked up a compost tea brewer, so we were doing classes on compost tea. We did one course on microbe identification, and we had a woman come out with her portable microscope, and she was identifying different microbes that we were cultivating in the composting process. We were able to have the national composting certification. We were able to land that one to be hosted here in Grand Junction. It was the first time that ever occurred. And this was a portion of that training that everyone from the national training came out and were able to go through the facility and see what all we had set up. So that was really rewarding from that point of view. It also helped keep the program going. Lastly, then, so on the environmental, the social, last thing would be the economic component. And it was very important to us that we wanted to generate income from the sales of the compost to go back to Sustainability Council to cover what we'd spent for labor. So it was a key piece that we set this up using money from the student government, that we set it up to pay a wage to the individual workers. So it was all student run. I was the faculty advisor, so I just kind of hung out in the background and gave ideas and nudged people, and made suggestions. But it was really rewarding for the students to figure out logistics, scheduling, how to make quality compost, organizing sales, meeting the customer to load up the compost for them. There was a lot of problem solving going on, working with the seasons, putting on shade for the compost, for the worms. I could go on about that, but back to that economic component. If we were paying an hourly wage, that meant that people were required to be here. And so we got a lot better follow through. But then by making the sales, we could bring money back to cover those wages as well as our operating expenses. And that was very gratifying. It was a beautiful example of sustainability, not just for the Sustainability Council, but it was also amazing for the students here on campus, because if you think about it, we have the raised bed gardens here that we grow crops for the culinary department. So here we're growing the food for the culinary department. They make magic with it and make these amazing meals. And then the food waste that they generate comes back out to us, that goes into the composting process. We make compost that then we take back to the raised bed gardens to grow the food, to make the waste, to make the compost, right? It's a beautiful demonstration of how you too can get involved not only in sustainable practices, but also carbon cycling, water cycling, waste cycling, right? It's all the principles of sustainability right here on site. So have a look over here. These are the bins that we built. Quite a unique design, I might point out, where we put in this U channel, and that way we could add and subtract boards as we need. So we could make a very small bin and start our piles, and then we could keep adding boards as we made bigger piles. This would be what we're looking at here. This is finished compost here. So you can see this is in a small form that plants can actually access. It's a beautiful granular substance. It's all a whole lot of sponges. It was really fantastic with all the food waste that we get, brings in a lot of different nutrients. And all different forms of food have different classes of bacteria, fungus, protozoa that naturally occur on them. So the more diversity of food crops that we could bring in, the better compost we could make. One of the key features then, so this would be our food collection area where people have been dropping off food that we could use. Like I say, we access food from the main campus and from the culinary department. And then during the off seasons, like spring break, summer break, we would work with the city market over on 12th and Patterson, and we could pick up food waste from them and bring it in so that we could keep the process going. This large structure here is a leaf house. So we organized a program with the city of Grand Junction, and so they would bring us over 2 dump truck loads each fall as part of their leaf pickup program. So again, instead of taking those leaves to some landfill, they would bring them here, and that was our carbon source that we could store. So we would take the carbon from the leaves being our carbon source, the food waste being our nitrogen source, And then we identified a woman out in Fruita who has a horse rescue program, and she has very well looked after horses that make very nice manure. It's weed free. She doesn't use any supplemental growth hormones or antibiotics, so there's no contaminants in the manure. So the manure is kind of the catalyst that has a natural occurring biological profile that we were able to take advantage of. So we would mix the food waste. We have a variety of wheelbarrows. We'd mix up the leaves with the food waste with the manure and then build our piles that way. All those documented. We followed the organic certification regulations. So we would monitor the temperatures, we'd monitor our inputs. We had a track record of every compost pile so that when someone would come to buy the compost, we could give them the whole story of who started that bin on what day. And that was gratifying. We also named all of our compost piles to give them a persona as part of our marketing efforts. From that point of view, just real quick, back it up. The student-led component, what I didn't anticipate is that each year we had different types of students. So one year we had folks that were biology majors and from environmental science. That was our best compost year we ever made. They were so focused on the microbiology and what was happening in the compost pile. It was amazing. Another year we had folks that had a background in business, and our compost facility manager, Hayden, was a marketing major. Most sales we ever generated in a year. Those folks knew how to sell product. It was amazing. Another year, and I'll stop here. Another year, we had two students that were elementary education teachers, students going to be teachers. So we formed a really good alliance with Tope Elementary, and we would take demonstrative compost over for some of the younger students, and then the older, the fifth and sixth graders, would come here for a day and learn composting techniques. So that was another way to keep that sustainability ball rolling by working with the next generations. Head on this way. So like I say, we would do the traditional composting, and then we built worm bins. And so we got into vermicomposting. So I've managed 4 different organic farms before working here as an instructor. And so I know the value of what worms can bring to an operation. So this is one of our bins here. And here we go. And these would be red wigglers. So red wigglers, Asenia fetida would be our worm of choice. They're a wonderful composting worm. We've got these from a worm producer over in Fort Collins because we wanted worms that were used to our climate, our alkaline soils, our alkaline water. And so we would start the composting process, monitor the temperatures to see that peak in the thermophilic process would get up over 131 degrees, for the 15-day period. And then when those temperatures would start coming down, that was our signal to go ahead and feed the worms. So then we would have these bins here. And then in the wintertime, we'd burrow them in with straw and put tarps and coverings, to hold on to temperatures here. This is a greenhouse construction roofing, so we can still get some thermal gain. Then building up the bins, then in the springtime, we could come in, do a feeding, draw all the worms up to the surface, shovel that off, start a new worm bin, work our way through that. We have 2 sifting devices here that we can sift the compost. So there was a tiered pricing system based on if you wanted sifted or unsifted. And then be able to promote that as a premium soil amendment, as well as a soil inoculant because of all the microbes to bring your soil back to life. Wonderful program that I can't say enough about. From my standpoint as an agriculture instructor, I was able to put together an entire semester-long class around composting that worked really well, had a really good enrollment. And then, like I say, with the crop production, with the soil science class, we were able to come out and do a lot of hands-on labs and make it very interactive. Fantastic operation, fantastic facility, and hope it keeps on going.